Welcome to our Tuesday Facebook Live, and I am so excited today because I'm chatting to a friend of mine, Kim Smith, who is the Emerging Leaders Pastor at the Baptist Union of Victoria, a great friend of mine. But today she's going to be talking to us around leadership fatigue. What does it look like to kind of look after yourself in this season? She's also going to talk around what does it look like to lead from the second chair, particularly in this season of remote teams. How does that work in this current environment? And she's also going to talk around what does it look like to lead teams. So I'm so excited to be able to have Kim with us today. My name's Kylie Butler, and I'm part of the Christian Coaching Institute. And we've been coaching and training leaders in coaching for over 10 years now. And CCI, Christian Coaching Institute, is Australia's leading Christian coaching organisation. And so it's my privilege to be able to welcome Kim right now, and I'm just going to bring her into the room now. Here she
Hi.
goes. Welcome. So good
that
to
would
have you with us.
That would have to be one of the shortest commutes to a meeting I've ever done. That was brilliant.
Absolutely. So Kim, tell us, how has your week been? Anything special happened this week?
Anything special? So funny you should ask, Kylie, because it was my birthday on Friday and I'm a big fan. I think Kylie is probably an equal fan of mine of birthdays. And so we talk birthday day, birthday week, birthday month. My hashtag is birthdays forever. I'm all for it. So I just a little shout out, Dan Andrews. Thank you for lifting the limitations and restrictions so that I could have my birthday with real people. I cannot thank you enough, because that would have been a very difficult mountain to climb if I had to have a fully ISO'd birthday.
Yeah, because Kim, people who know you and love you know that you are extroverted. So how has this season been for you as an extrovert?
Yeah, well, you know how people are asking the question, what have you learned about yourself in isolation? Did you discover anything? I discovered that I'm definitely an extrovert. Like, this has been, there's someone said I put the extra in extrovert. Like, that's how extroverted I am. So I have felt the full stretch of that. I live by myself, so there are days where I don't see live human beings, and that has been insanely challenging, growing and developing and strengthening my character, I'm sure, but not preferred. I have actually been quite surprised. I've managed to manage myself, and so it's been I've taken a lot of intentionality around rhythms and disciplines to sort of get some light and shade in my days, and distinction between work and rest, and weekday and weekend and all those sorts of things, because it can all look a little bit same. I feel like everything I say to this space. And so Enneagram 7, extrovert, sanguine, however you want to sort of understand me, diversity, change, doing different things, new things, all that kind of stuff, that's my jam. And instead I'm doing slightly different things, but from exactly the same place.
Same spot.
My house, it's like Groundhog Day. So it's been a little bit of a challenge. But I genuinely I've done well. Like, I feel like my spirit has not been crushed in this season. I have managed to thrive and flourish and hopefully be reasonably fruitful and productive in the process. So, and I'm still standing.
You are, and you're with us today, which is such a win in that space. But Kim, there's a couple of things I'd love to be able to, as we've been chatting and thinking around what to be able to share with our people here. One was particularly around leadership fatigue. Tell us what you're noticing as you work with leaders all across the state of Victoria.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, like, my role involves connecting in with generations, leaders and pastors, particularly across our churches right across the state, so over 240 churches, and a lot of diversity within that. But the commonality, here we are 9-10 weeks into online ministry and engagement, and our leaders just universally sharing that it's just exhausting, that they had to shift so fast, and our churches have been amazing at that. I mean, you think anyone who's engaged in a church can appreciate what it takes to change, regular Sunday ministry, youth ministry, kids ministry, all of these things, to suddenly have every sort of structure and system that we relied on taken away. And so everyone's learning new skills. They're, engaging in a means, in a way that may not even be their preference or comfort, let alone their experience. And so everybody's sort of pushing, no one's getting to go, oh, this is my natural, comfortable space. I'm just living my lane. I'm running my, my best race here. Everybody is having to think outside of their regular patterns, often engage different gifts or skills, and so where people are fatigued. And I mean, I find that even in myself, just because of the monotony of it, let alone any sort of stretch. And then you add in younger leaders who may have young families. They're trying to do home life and work life in the same four walls. All of the different things that everybody, like, you don't need to keep repeating them, I guess, because everybody gets what the challenges are. But but there's a fatigue that's setting in. And I think the conversations that I'm trying to have, if I can get time with people because they're so busy, is to say, just be aware of that. Like, there's in some ways we can't kind of change the context just yet. There's something shifting. I think it's going to be equally, if not more, challenging to re-enter into church, like live church and live ministry spaces, with a whole lot of regulations and a whole lot of difference. So it's not over yet. We haven't hit the end where we get to go, oh, we made it. But I think there's a point that everybody has to acknowledge in themselves, like, how am I going physically, spiritually, emotionally, relationally? And it's okay to be tired. Maybe it's the time to start saying, do we need all of these things? Where is our best spend? And just as a little side note to that, the language we're using is it's connection over content. That if you're going to prioritize somewhere, when you're talking ministry and leadership, prioritize people, not program. They're more interested in relating to people than they are in being entertained. So if you're going to have to drop a ball, drop that one. Drop the fact that it needs to be bells and whistles, or drop something. But yeah, just that mindfulness. I think that's the conversation I'm really trying, or the encouragement I'm trying to bring to our leaders. You probably are fatigued, and it's completely acceptable that you are, but you can't ignore the fact that you are and just hope it's going to go away.
And then mix in that, a lot of the leaders that you're working with are leaders who are not the boss. They're the 2IC or the second chair, or they're a part of a leadership team. So they're not the ones kind of making the ultimate decision.
Yeah.
What sort of things are you noticing around leaders from the second chair space?
Well, I think the challenge for anyone who's used to working in teams, so as a second chair or as part of a broader team, you're probably not having the same interaction with that team. So there's a degree of extra isolation in the isolation. And I mean, you might still have your Monday morning half an hour or whatever it is that's part of the rhythm that you've put into meeting with your upline. But if you're not bumping into them in the corridor and just like, hey, what about that? And did you think about that? And so there's just that natural kind of incidental interactions that actually buoy us in our ministry. They energize us. We know that we're not alone. We know that other people are aware of what we're doing. And so there's a bit more sort of support and structure underneath that. They're the moments we get our encouragement. Hey, heard you did a great job last night at youth. Yeah, good job. Just as you're walking past, just that sort of incidental stuff of just feeling the confidence of your leadership and feeling, how do they know what I'm doing, and are they confident that what I'm doing is okay? And because those natural feedback loops are not available to us. And I mean, an encouragement for me to senior leadership and to anyone leading others is to actually take a really big step forward in offering encouragement, particularly encouragement, just to sort of, hey, keep it up. You're doing well. I see you. I appreciate you. I think everybody needs more encouragement than we think they do, and everybody says it less than they think they do and than they ought to do. And so to take those moments to encourage people, because I think our leaders who are sitting in those sort of if we think of sort of the church structure, they're in a specific area of ministry that sort of draws them out to the side in terms of their focus and their engagement. that there needs extra work to keep them tethered to the bigger picture and to senior leadership, and to have all of the resource that they may have, or hopefully have, become accustomed to from their senior leadership in terms of that encouragement, having their back, sounding board for ideas, investing in them, that sort of stuff. I think that's a really key challenge for those in those secondary roles, that and I think they recognize that senior leadership's carrying a completely different kind of weight. But I think senior leadership's fatigue, senior leadership's dealing with family at home, everyone, they're not isolated. But I think again, if you've got to drop a ball, it shouldn't be encouraging your other team and leaders, because the further away they feel from the center, the harder that's going to be for them. Productivity is going to drop, throughput's going to drop, satisfaction's going to change. All of those things are going to be impacted. It's definitely worth the spend, I think.
Yeah. And what are you noticing around kind of the teams and the culture and dealing with kind of disappointments and stuff that happen in this season?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's not new, but I think it's just worth acknowledging. It's a very hard environment to maintain culture and team, because, as I mentioned before, all your natural avenues of engagement are kind of cut off, and it turns into this more intentional, less face-to-face. I mean, online is good, but we've heard all of the stories of how it's limited in how it can replace the interpersonal stuff. I mean, I find it myself, I laugh less when I'm talking on a Zoom or something, because I'm afraid that my laughing is going to gate somebody else. And then it's like, what? Who said who? Oh no, I was just laughing. It was because she, what? Yeah, don't worry about it. So
I get you. Violent laughing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. But instead you just go, you want to, it was funny, but I can't interrupt everything for it. And so there's no release in that. There's the time where you just have a good old belly laugh, or you or cry, or that emotional release. We're not getting that, and so it's just really easy for a team to fracture, because we're so sick of doing these Zoom things, we're like, look, let's just do a 20-minute stand-up type meeting. What are you working on? What are you working on? What are you working on? Great, go. And it's sort of like, oh, that was not, yay, but didn't enforce culture or vision or appreciation or team, relationship. All it did was just set us on our tasks. And I think that's hard. So I'll look at it in the generation space, where you've got pastors of youth ministries or kids ministries and families ministries who are trying to oversee volunteers, because that's been a big challenge for leaders. The volunteers have gone to their homes too. The volunteers have got super busy. And so churches that would otherwise run a really team-oriented ministry are now sort of narrowing back to key leaders or paid people or whatever.
Yeah.
And so trying to keep that team dynamic, and we're still all on mission together, and remember why we're here and all that sort of, it's a harder thing to do. But again, I think it's an investment that has to be made, not only for this season, but for what we return to at the end. If there's an attrition of leadership and team and culture and dynamic, that it's like, yay, we can go back to church, and you walk in and there's 3 people waiting for you. It's sort of, where did everybody go? And I think, I reckon that's a challenge, again, particularly for people in paid ministry. Your role is always to be releasing others to do ministry. It's not to be doing everything yourself. And I think this environment, this current context for us has really pulled it back, because we're all going, oh, I get paid for this, and I can't ask Kylie because she's got kids at home, and she's, so I'll just do it. And we kind of take back everything that we might have otherwise released.
Yeah.
And so that's disempowering for our teams. It's unsustainable for you. It's not giving the best to the ministries that we're leading. And so again, there's no quick fix to it. There's no, remedy, but I would think it's just important. And I want to encourage people to bring that conversation further forward in mind, that it's a higher priority than perhaps we're thinking it is, to be, all of those things, to be mindful of our own energy levels, to be watching how we're navigating into staff relationship and leadership team dynamics, but then also what we're doing to continue to maintain culture.
Yeah.
Are we celebrating, guys, last week someone gave their life to Jesus, in one of our small groups, or I had a really great feedback, a great message from somebody to give us some feedback of how well we're doing. Are we sharing that and continuing to energize our teams for the mission and for the purpose that the team exists, so that they stay connected and stay. I mean, people are dealing with such disappointment. I mean, talking to young youth leaders, youth team leaders who've turned into sort of grief counselors. You got people whose weddings have been cancelled, and holidays have been cancelled, and they didn't get to go to their grandpa's funeral, and all these. There's a lot of trauma and a lot of high intensity stuff that's hard to deal with at the best of times, let alone in this state. But I think it has to be a high priority for us in terms of thinking, what are we preparing for, not just how are we paddling to stay alive. What are we building, and what are we trying to keep in our some part of our perspective of what's to come, that would shape how we spend our energy and time and what we prioritize and focus on now.
That's awesome, Kim. Loved that insight. For those of you who might be watching that might be interested in kind of increasing the quality of your conversations, or having better conversations with your team, understanding sales goals, that sort of thing, we do have our Coach Mastery course that's starting in an evening, so evening in Victorian time, starting June 4th. For those that might be interested in that, it is online. Everything's online nowadays. Everything. But we've been running that for a couple of years now, so we've got the knack of how to do online courses. So if that's you, just jump onto our website or put a note in the comments, and we're happy to kind of share some further info with you around that. But Kim, it's been such a privilege and honor to be able to chat with you today. It's always so much fun to be able to have a conversation with you. But to be able to hear around leadership fatigue, and that, it is a real reality, but what does our self-care look like when we are fatigued? Talking particularly to leaders who might be leading from the second chair, second position, what does that look like for them to lead up, but also those who might be the leads in that organization? How do you lead your people around you? And then what does it look like for teams? And not actually taking it all or pulling it all into ourselves, but actually how do we continue to empower and release others in this season? And how do we kind of help people to deal with the grief and disappointments that happen in this season? But Kim, any further insights or tips that you want to leave with us before we finish up today?
Yeah, just leaders, be encouraged. You're probably doing better than you think you are. And if no one else has said it to you today, we appreciate you. We're thankful that you're stepping into that void. And in fact, it is, it's at times of crisis or times of great change that leadership comes to the fore. And so, this is a moment you're in the right place. You have all you need to do all that God's asking you to do. And I think, just be encouraged. And even in what I've said, I think, you could probably take notes and go, I've got to contact this person and add 17 meetings to my day. Don't hear it as additional tasks, but just encouragement in the way that you're already conducting your leadership. How can you let these thoughts infuse something of your prioritizing and the choices that you're making, and maybe to sort of shift, reorienting a little more towards that stuff, rather than thinking it's another burden you have to add to an already burdened schedule. Yeah,
that's great wisdom, Kimmy. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Okay.
And look forward to seeing everybody next week, Tuesday at 1 o'clock.
See ya.